Hello, I'm Claire from Cult Pens. Thank you very much for joining us. We've had the largest amount of people register for this workshop that we've ever had, which is very exciting. So this is going to be incredible. And we're going to be talking about ink art with Nick Stewart. And hopefully you got to see one of his pieces of art just there at the beginning. So before I hand over to Nick, there's just a couple of points of housekeeping to highlight. So everybody, someone's just asked this question. Yes, you're all muted, so don't worry if you make noise. And all your cameras are off for the duration of the webinar, so we can't hear or see you. Yeah, feel free to kick back and relax. We anticipate that the session's going to last about an hour, so do make sure you're comfy. We're going to record the session, so if you do miss anything, don't worry, you'll be able to look at it again. But also you can ask us questions. There's a question, lots of you are in chat already, I can see. So ask a question below, and if we can, we'll interrupt Nick with any questions, or if we just want to slow down, or you want to ask for something to be repeated, that's fine too. So as I said, all cameras and sound off for the duration of the session, but please use the Q&A, and myself and Nicola from Cult Pens will be on hand. We'll do our very best to answer your questions, and we will try and gently interrupt Nick if we can find a moment to do that. If we're doing okay for time, then we also might have some time for some questions at the end. And I can see lots of people joining from all over the world, so this is very exciting. Thank you all for joining us from afar. So Nick, if you are ready, I'm going to switch over cameras. If you want to switch your camera on, Nick, so everyone can see you, and I will get you up on screen. So hopefully everyone can see Nick now.
Hi everyone.
So Nick, before we properly get stuck into the activities today, I know you've been investigating the properties of fountain pen ink for about 5 years, but how did all this start? Where has all this come from?
Well, I first got into this sort of process when I was at art college, which is some time ago. And then, as you quite rightly said, about 6 years ago, I just decided that I wanted to be distracted from just everyday stuff, and I went back in time to to look at fountain penning, which I'd used a lot as a student, and it started from there. I first was only aware of maybe 4 or 5 inks, which was mainly Parker and Schaefer. And as you can see behind me, there's some pictures which are a bit out of focus, but that was just using Parker red, black, and then Schaefer black. We didn't really know that there were any other fountain pen inks available. And so 5 years ago, I started looking for coloured inks and was quite surprised just at the sheer amount of inks that are available. And I just started collecting them and experimented to see what I could do with them. So
shall I spotlight on the other camera so everyone can?
Yeah, I mean, I can show how I started off.
Lovely, yeah, we're ready.
Okay.
You're sharing the screen with that one at the moment. Shall I take you off as well, and then off spotlight, and you can share your amazing creation?
The first thing I started doing was to literally swatch the inks, and I didn't just do it as a sort of an ordinary swatch. I thought I would just lay down some water and then add the ink to the water and just see what happened. And this is some recent stuff I've been doing for Anya at Papier and Stift. And these are Kobe inks. And you can see that when you actually add them to water, you're not just getting the primary colour that you think it is. There are lots of hidden colours coming through, which are, for example, on the Old City Sepia, got greys, pinks and greens, and on the Rocco Green we've got greys and yellows. So you're instantly already dealing with something that can give you an automatic watercolor painting. So that's I found that quite fascinating. But the other thing that is also quite interesting with fountain pen inks is that they do react with bleach. So at the top of these swatch guides, you can see that I've just used a little bit of bleach here with a dip pen, and that reacts with the ink as well. So it's looking, I thought at the time, it's looking quite exciting to pursue this as a sort of a little project, and just to see where it might lead.
And here we are 5 years later.
Yes, we're here 5 years later, and it has moved on a bit. I think I've tested nearly, coming on for about 2,000 different inks. And the delightful thing is that each ink has its own sort of personality. And some of them don't have any qualities at all. They're just very, very flat. Others are incredibly dynamic and produce 3 or 4 colours coming out of solution. Others change colour when you add them to bleach. Yeah, that they are quite fascinating.
Brilliant. There's a couple of questions.
Yeah.
So we're not using bleach today, but it is something that you do, obviously. So if anyone's interested, they can find out more about that on the website. But one of our participants has asked if you dilute the bleach when you use it, or perhaps you have a preferred bleach brand. I don't know if that's a thing.
It's a very good question, and bleach does change over time, and also the different fountain pen inks that you use are all different sort of concentrations and thicknesses. So, for example, if I've got a very light wash and I want to work into it with bleach, of course, I'm not going to use a very heavy solution. I will mix it with water. So there's hardly any bleach there at all, because I just don't need it, and it will just gently take away some tiny little areas that I don't need. So, for example, if I show you this, the actual snow at the background there, because it's such a light wash, there was hardly any bleach at all, and literally it must have watered down maybe 1 part bleach to 9 parts water, because it doesn't need much to take out these beautiful delicate grey blues. On the other hand, if this bit here where I was working in to get some sort of snow glacier effects into this dark heavy color here, I would up the concentration to probably 50-50, and then using some kitchen towel, I'll just put that on, just as kitchen towel here, and blot that off, and then reapply, blot it off again. So I'm not using very much of it, and in fact, here we are, I'll show you. I just keep my bleach in just a tiny, an old ink bottle. That's a 50-50 mix.
Okay.
And I hardly use any at all. And over time, of course, the bleach breaks down as well, so it's getting weaker all the time.
Have you ever used a water brush with fountain pen ink to blend it? You know, the art.
I have.
Yeah. Does that work for you? What you do?
I think if I'm doing brush lettering, I might use it. To be honest with you, I think they need a lot of practice, and I haven't practiced enough. So I just stick to ordinary synthetic paintbrushes and water.
And someone's just asked about the consistency of the bleach, because it varies so much what you obviously buy. Show us your bottle again, can you, on camera, and give it a little shake, just to give us an idea of how thick and. Okay.
It's not very thick.
And you're just buying using standard household bleach and diluting. Okay.
Yes. I mean, I know in some countries they don't necessarily have. I don't know why, but some countries don't seem to stock household bleach. I don't know why that is. We just take it for granted, I suppose.
Yes. Yeah. And in terms of what everyone's going to need for the session today, someone's asking about brushes. Can you show us what you'll be using?
Yeah, absolutely.
So people can get an idea of what they might need.
Okay. We are going to need if I just lift up a tiny bit, how's that? We are going to need, I've got a big watercolor brush here, but you don't need something that thick. You can probably go for something like that. Okay. That's just for putting the water down onto the paper. That's just to put water on the paper.
Okay.
So you just need a brush to take water from the pot onto the paper. Then you're going to need a brush you don't necessarily need a brush, actually. You can use I just use this is a standard number 5. I also use a rigger brush. This is number 2. You don't need those tonight if you don't want to use them, but that's literally to take the ink from the bottle and just to gently take a tiny piece, dob of the ink and put it onto the paper, into the wetted area.
So if someone wanted to just sort of dampen down a piece of paper in any method they can, is that going to work?
Yeah.
Just spray a bit of water on there, damp it down. I think you said to me before when we were practicing, it does need to be quite wet.
It does, and I'll explain that when we get to that point. And the last thing is a fountain pen or a dip pen. If you want to use a dip pen, you can use a dip pen. I've got a dip pen here, which I won't be using tonight, but that's a dip pen. There's a G nib in it, but you can use one of those if you want. So I just use a cheap fountain pen. This is a Noodler's Creeper, which is possibly one of the cheapest on the market, and I use it all the time. But that's just typical, isn't it? And I just have this twisted down. I never use the actual chamber. I just use it as a dip pen, and that's what I'm using tonight.
What nib size do you have on there?
This is the standard nib that comes with this pen. I think it's just a flex nib, tiny little flex nib. And Frank, you know, what we're doing tonight is the most simple exercise that we can do. Okay, it's literally just using chromatography to create a miniature watercolor landscape, and that's what we're going to be doing tonight.
Lovely.
Okay,
and lots of questions. Everyone's very excited about this already, so we will get going in a minute. Does the bleach destroy the paper over time?
That's a very good question, and once again, it depends how much the type of paper that you're using and how concentrated the bleach is. As I don't use, I have used. Well, you can see it on the wall behind me. Those pictures there are 7 years old. They were using really heavy bleach, and the paper's still great. And what I did with those is I used a really heavy Bockingford watercolor paper. That was a £200 watercolor paper. You know, that's going to outlast me easy. So I mean, I think the paper surface that you use is very important, and I'll be going through different types of paper surfaces in a minute. Okay.
Lovely. I think that's all our questions so far. So I'm going to hand over to you, and I'm going to spotlight your hands, the camera that's on the table there. Yeah, lovely. And you can get started.
Do you want to know a little bit more about how I got into this, or should we do that at the end?
Go on. Yes, let's do that.
Why people should do it? Why people should just consider doing this?
That would be lovely.
Okay. Well, I think the first thing to say is that one thing that's important to me is that this whole area of investigation, or it's a hobby really, it's about reimagining fountain penning, which is arguably something that is pretty much, apart from us lot in our small little group, it is on a wider scale. I would say that it probably is looking at obsolescence to most people. So it's something that's not really thought about. And what we're doing here is just reimagining it to see if it can do other things than just handwriting, and hopefully kickstart some interest so that people might want to think about using it more regularly for creative purposes, which should be brilliant. It's very, very tactile, and it's also what's the word I'm looking for? It's very versatile. That's the word. It's very versatile because you can work both ways with this. You can work dark onto light, which is your standard sort of sketching and painting, which is using ink onto a white paper surface, or you can, with bleach and with blotting out, you can work light into dark. So you can do both things with this. So it is very versatile. Incidentally, every fountain pen ink is unique. So they've all got their own little personalities, and I use quite a few, which I'm very fond of at the moment, and I do change my sort of feelings towards each as I use them and find new ones. They're not just like standard watercolors at all, or standard watercolor inks. They are unique, they are very individual, and they have their own little characters. So that's quite fascinating if you want to get into swatch carding, because everyone is different. The other thing to say is what I like about this particularly is that this process allows you to make mistakes. And I personally think that's very important, because we do live in a world whereby we don't really tolerate mistakes anymore, and we will punish people who do make mistakes, which I think is a terrible thing, because we only learn through our mistakes. And this process absolutely champions the art of making a happy accident. And I'm going to prove that to you tonight. And you don't need any artistic ability whatsoever to make a fantastic watercolor. And that's an absolute promise.
Love that.
And
Thank
finally,
you.
What I also like about this is that it's about making art out of destruction, because we are literally deconstructing the fountain pen ink, and we're subjecting it to all sorts of unspeakable abuse, and making beautiful statements from it. So I think, you know, from every angle you want to look at this, it's just you know, it's a fantastic thing to do. It's just new, it's exciting, it's dangerous in terms that you don't know what you're going to be doing. And you know, I do one thing and I look at stuff people are doing online, and people are doing some wonderful things with it already, and it's just great. And I think that it's got a lot more to give, a hell of a lot more to give. And that is the end of my spiel. So shall we get on with the demo? Let's
start. I've got lots of questions, but I'll try and add those in. So to everyone in the chat, okay, I'll try and add in the questions as we go through so that you can get started. And I'll switch our cameras over now.
Camera over, and I'm going to talk you through what I'm going to do. Okay, right, what I've got here is just a little piece of cartridge paper. That's just ordinary cartridge paper. And what I'm going to do is I've got 3 inks beside me. I did see someone say I haven't got a grey ink. Well, don't worry, because when I'm going to do this, you'll understand that you can use whatever you want. So I'm just going to put some water down. Okay, right, I think you can see that reflected. Yeah. But it is quite wet. Now the first ink I'm going to use is Parker Quink, and you don't need very much of this. Okay. And we're just going to wait for those colours to come out. Okay, I'm now going to make another wetted area here. And I'm now going to use something called Noodler's Rome Burning, which, if I just do a little thing at the top here, it has been described as one of the most boring brown inks in the world. But you watch this. I'm just going to put a little wet on here. That is Noodler's Rome Burning, and as you can see, that is popping with yellows and purples, and that will just get stronger as let's move that a bit here. You can see those yellows coming out of solution now. So we're getting greys, pinks, greens, and yellows. I mean, that is an incredible. It's a very unstable ink, I'll tell you. But I mean, if you want to do some stuff with Noodler's Rome Burning, I mean, that's just amazing.
And is that one of the questions was about finding the inks that have really good chromographic properties? That, and I think you mentioned when we were speaking before that diamine inks are good. But do you have particular favourites at the moment? You also said you chop and change a bit, but
well, I mean, I just put this to one side. I've got one more to do. We've got well, I'll just say this. It's just a quick way of showing you what I do. I use lots of water, and then I just literally just let the inks flow. So I'll put that to one side there. These little cards here are little swatch cards using the latest Cult Pens inks. And that's not because I'm trying to be all creepy here. because Cult Pens are letting me do this thing. It's because they were to hand and they were quite recent. And you can see that with Matthew, we've got some lovely little things going on here with these pinks, blues and greys. We've got Cult Pens Devon Green and Cult Pens Blue. And strangely enough, these two at the bottom here are by Diamine, which were made for Cult Pens, and the top two were made by Robert Oster in Australia. And you're quite right, I'm very fond of both brands because they have these beautiful chromatic qualities. So with the Louisa, for example, we've got browns, olives, yellows. I think you can see them, can't you? You can see what they're doing. And yeah, it's wonderful. It's great. And that's a sort of watercolor just from one ink. There's nothing else in there. That's just one ink. So the potential for art journaling and going traveling and painting and being creative is very good. So I'm going to pull these back now, and you can see that quite a lot has happened. The Rome noodles burning has gone bananas, and it's fascinating, really. So if you, once that's dry, I mean, you can work on top of that. You could do some calligraphy on there. You can use landscapes, whatever you want. It's just great, absolutely wonderful. And the Parker Quink, as you can see, it hasn't actually been as interesting as possibly it could be. And the reason for that is because I'm using cartridge paper. So I'm going to just change that and do something else for some other inks. So this little swatch card here is Bockingford. It's Bockingford £200. And what we'll do here is we'll just put a little bit of I'm just going to put a bit of this Diamine Earl Grey on here and just see what happens here.
Well, one of our attendees has just shared that they've discovered a Diamine blue black has just gone turquoise on them. So sounds like people are having fun with this now.
No, that's right. I think they've just added some bleach, haven't
they? They haven't said. I'm sure they'll confirm.
Yeah, it can Diamine. Sorry, the Cult Pen. Sorry, what am I saying? The Diamine Earl Grey. Once it's dry, once you go into the heavy areas of bleach, it turns this beautiful neon blue. Oh, just water. Ooh. Oh, what paper were you using?
You keep going, and I'll keep an eye out.
Okay.
On the reply.
Well, this one here, this I'm just going to blot it a little bit off here. This Diamine here, this Earl Grey, it does take a little while for the reds to come out. I don't know whether this camera's not great, but they are coming. The reds are coming out. And if I bring this back in, you can see that Parker is starting to get the gold areas. It's coming through now. So with the swatch cards and with this experimentation, you do need to be a little bit patient to wait for the colours to separate.
And our attendees just said that the paper's a 300-gram watercolor paper.
Oh, perfect. Well, I'm not surprised then. That's great. Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah, it is important. I think that the better the paper, I think the better the results you might get. So that is important. So if you are looking at working into a sketchbook or just separate sheets of paper, do think about that, because the better quality that you get, the better results you might get too. So as you can see, these are still fizzing away, and they're starting to happen now. So I'm just going to go into the Diamine with my pen, because we're going to be using this technique in a minute. I'm just going to go in with a little You can see what I'm doing here. I'm just going to put a little line down here, my horizon line. And I'm literally just making the impression of some trees. Can you see that? Very, very simple. And once again, as this starts to dry, you can see that the colours are all coming out. And once again, if I bring that Parker Quink now, you can see it's got these lovely blues colours, and it's getting the golds are coming out now. And likewise here with the Darwin, you can see those reds and pinks are starting to come out of the colour.
Amazing. And Nick, any specific paper recommendations? Anything that you prefer?
I do use Bockingford a lot because it's affordable. For me, it's affordable. I do use an awful lot of paper. I use the Bockingford hot press, which is the very smooth paper, which is what I do some of these things on. So you get some really lovely chromatography coming out in the backgrounds. This is a Robert Oster Australian opal mauve. So if you want anyone in Australia, by the way, who's got some of that, and they haven't got Darming Earl Grey, get your Robert Osters out because it's good stuff. And you can see that when you add bleach to it, it goes this neon turquoise. So you could use that in a minute. I love this colour. I love it. Love it to bits. And you can see here, this is the Parker when it's dry. I've just gone on top of it with doing some line work. But this one underneath, this is going, that will look like that very shortly. So that's basically how I get the chromatography to come out of solution. Sadly, this camera's not picking up. Can you see the pinks in there?
You can see it just sort of starting, yeah. Yeah,
it's actually a bit more dramatic. The one I'm looking at is getting very pink now, but sadly this camera is not superb. But you can see with the other two, things are starting to happen.
And the watercolor paper is quite absorbent. Does that work for this, or do you, one of the questions that's come through is you not need something that's less absorbent than that?
Well, I think I don't know the answer to that, is the honest truth. I think that the different papers will give you different effects, if that makes sense. Because if you're using something like a Tumu River paper, which is not very absorbent, it's very, very good stuff for using sheening inks and shimmer inks. Because it's the concentration of the inks is going to remain there. It's not going to just disappear into something like a watercolor paper.
Okay, that makes sense. So, but I think this is probably a case of suggesting that people have a test and have a play, as you were talking about earlier. See what happens.
What I'm going to do now is, you see, I don't know whether you can see that now. You can definitely see that now. Can you see the little trees there?
Yes.
And the atmosphere. That's all coming out of solution now. So that is getting really nice and red. So we're getting, what I love is when you see watercolor artists showing off their skills on Instagram, you can see they've done these lovely atmospheres, which they probably used 3 or 4 colors for. Tonight, we're all going to make a fantastic watercolor, and we're going to just use one.
Love it.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Do you ever add more water to after you've started? Try and maneuver anything around, or do you just let it do its thing?
I do, but not with this experiment, because this is really about trying to whet people's appetites to see if they like what they're going to get.
Great.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally makes sense.
I'm going to go back to that question about watercolor paper, because I've got some hot press here, and this is obviously the rough. Now, can you see if I get a little bit of wood here, there? Can you see these little areas here which are white? This negative space here.
Yes, we can. Yeah.
These areas here are where the water hasn't taken to the paper. So you get this lovely textures, or these little happy accidents, which is watercolor. So you would only get that on the rough colored paper. So if you're doing a landscape like this, it's probably a good idea to do it on a textured paper if you want to get those effects of trees and the landscape, etc.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Love that. Yeah, love that effect.
If I'm doing something which is really, really smooth, and I don't want anything like that because this is like a sort of a snowy scene, I don't want anything missed out. So I'm using a hot press here, which is really smooth. So, and yes, for this one, I would agitate that background to get it to move around the page. Okay, but as I said, this is a move on for what we're doing tonight, because tonight we are literally looking at something really. Can you see that's really working now?
Yes, it's really starting to come out.
Yeah. So in a minute we're going to do the proper thing.
Okay.
Once again, and here you can see what we've done here. I mean, you know, we just got two colours working here, and we've got all this going on. That's just great, isn't it?
It looks amazing. So getting so many questions. I think people are fascinated, as am I. Do you ever use salt as part of the process?
No.
Okay.
You could use salt because we're using dyes here, and they are very good for pigmented stuff. So if you're using watercolor pigments or using pigmented ink, you'll probably get away with salt, but it doesn't really work that well with dyes, unfortunately.
Okay. And
well, I haven't had much success with it. You know, I still think I'm getting more drama from the bleach just by applying it in different ways.
Okay. And are all the inks water-based that we're using? So have you different types of ink, Indian inks and acrylics? Have you done any testing with different types of ink?
Well, the rule that I use is it has to be a fountain pen ink. So if you can't use Indian inks or calligraphy inks through a fountain pen, because the ink will dry and you'll jam up the feed, and the nib will be stuck to the feed and then stuck to the nib unit. The pen is absolutely useless. This is purely for fountain pen ink. So if it goes through a fountain pen and it works, then you can use it.
Brilliant.
Then I won't feel responsible if things go wrong, you see, if people break their pens.
Okay, that was a very clear recommendation. I like it.
Yeah, so it has to be fountain pen inks. So they are water-based. Most of the best ones that I've tried are dye-based. And as I said, Robert Oster, Diamine, and some of the Japanese inks, not all of them, are very interesting to use. So I've recently tested the Sailor Ink Studio range. Fabulous chromatography, but they are not as easy to use as Robert Oster and Diamine. They are a bit more complex. So if you do want to go down that route, I would suggest you practice with the Diamine and Robert Oster first, get your confidence up, and then have a look at the Sailor ones, because they don't necessarily react with bleach. They can be a bit difficult with water as well. It's just because of the concentrations and maybe some of the chemicals they're using inside the ink. I'm not a chemist, so I'm just supposing here.
And have you ever used any Herbane? Some of the, I think that's more natural dye. Again, getting some questions about that.
No,
okay.
no.
That's one for someone to test and share the results and see what happens potentially.
Yeah, I think. As I said, I mean, I think the project that I've got myself involved with hasn't really got a beginning or an end. It is evolving, but I do want to keep it purely to fountain pen inks. And of course, there are things which are inside the inks that we don't know much about, i.e., alcohols and detergents, etc., which are there for the sake of making the flow of the ink through a fountain pen more easily and for keeping the nib clean. And of course, all of these chemicals have an effect, I'm sure, when we're making the art.
And actually, we've got someone who's testing a Herbin ink at the moment and said they're not getting much from it.
Herbin?
Herbin, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, the Herbin ink.
Herbin.
Yes,
They're not getting much from it, so.
No, I'm afraid Herbin inks are rather like the Pastillier inks. They're beautiful inks. I do paint with Herbin, and they do react with bleach, but there isn't a lot of chromatography in them. So yeah, I'm sorry. But if you go to my website, which is nickstewart.ink, and if you use the search facility, if I've tested the ink that you're looking for, the swatch cards will come up and you can see if there's going to be anything going on. And I usually make a few notes about each one. So you can see with the Kobe here, there's something going on. So they're worth looking into from a Japanese ink point of view. You can see they work. But yeah, Herbin, sadly, their standard range is very flat.
Okay, lovely.
Oh, someone said Tasha. Yeah, Tasha are very good. They're lovely. Great inks. So here we go. This is nearly dry now. It's getting there. I think you can see the colours now. That we have got grey, black. We've got this beautiful deep salmony, pink, red, rosy, and these lovely blues here. So I think we're nearly ready to go. What's the time? 22. So we're ready to go with the final thing. Yeah?
Great.
Right. Okay, so we've had a little play with the inks, and we can see that inks are all different and they all break down differently. So I'm now going to make a little swatch card. Now, the first thing to remember from a design point of view is we use the thirds rule. So we want to make sure that our horizon is a third of the way up the page and a third of the way up the page, so that we've got 2/3 left for the sky or anything that's actually yet stuck on the horizon. So we've got a design point of view there. The first thing I'm going to do is just put some water down on this swatch card. Which is about 2/3 of the way. And I just want to put, I don't want to put too much ink in. Just want to sort of just put enough just to come down to create a sky. And what I'm going to do to speed things up here is the remaining, if there's too much water on the card, just using some kitchen roll here. Just to mop some of that up. Okay, so we've got a very, very delicate sky. Can you see that? You can just see the water reflected here, can't you? So you can see I've put some water on there. Then what I'm going to do is I'm using my pen about 5 millimeters from the bottom of the wet area. I'm just going to do a couple of lines. Okay. And then I'm going to get my paintbrush and I'm literally just going to touch those lines just to make them bleed a little bit, just for the bottom of the landscape there. Okay. Let's go place that a bit more of that. That's like there. So I'm just going to let this dry off a tiny bit. Before I go in to try and make these sort of impression of trees. So what I'm doing is I'm literally just going into the wetted area in the skyline and then bringing the stroke down to meet that line underneath it. Okay. And that's it. And you can put some little bits of detail in here if you wish. And that's it. And if you want to just add a little bit more drama.
And that's the same ink, Nick, that you've used at the start to blend and that you're going over now.
Yes, that will eventually look like that. Okay,
Incredible.
that will come out of solution, and you'll be left with a lovely watercolor, which you can then sign and frame, and that's it. You've made yourself a gorgeous watercolor. So we can do this all night if you want.
I love watching. And I think everyone's still joining in. So,
there.
I know you've got the Cult Pens inks there. So these are a few questions about them. They're made for us by Diamine. They are, but
Robert Oster.
And we've got some Robert Oster. So we do have some exclusive inks that have been kindly made for us by Diamine, by Robert Oster. If you have a look on the website, you can find them. And we've named them Matthew and Louise, and there's a Michael and a Matt, and so they're named after some of our longest serving team members at Cult Pens. So we're working our way through the team. And yes, there's a Robert, a Christine, a Maureen, a Philip. Christine and Philip are from Diamine. They run the business there, so that the original inks were named after them.
So there you have it. Shall we do one more?
Yes, please.
I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll do a noodles, because that's quite exciting. So once again, just the top 2/3 or approximately, just wetting that down.
And another question that's coming through is around the light fastness of ink, using ink versus watercolor. So in your experience, how long might these last in terms of light fast?
I use well, once again, if you're doing any watercolors, you shouldn't really hang them in a bright light source, because they are, the UV will affect them over time. Yes, it is an issue. What I found is if I'm doing some work which I want to hang, then what I will tend to do is I will spray them with a UV protection spray. It's not ideal to use on things like shimmer inks, because it will dull them, which is a shame. But for using standard inks with chromo and bleach, it works fine, and that's what I use. It's a UV spray. It's the typical spray that you would use for treating photographs that you're printing out on an inkjet printer. That's what I use.
Okay.
But also, as I said, although inks are fugitive, not all are fugitive as some. So if you have got some very light inks, pinks particularly, and oranges, they may well fade quite quickly. Others inks, some of the heavier sheens, will just hold their colour for a long, long time. Right, I'm just going to go in here and just put a few lines in here, and then you can also see with the noodlers that it does have this strange sort of patterning to it, which is quite nice.
Someone's just suggested Vinter inks.
Vinter are great. They're great. Yes, they're good.
Someone's having fun with them, I think. And what about more permanent inks and iron gall fountain pen inks? Do they work? Have you done much testing with those?
I have done some. I know that some of KWZ do some callings, and so do Roher and Klingner, which I've used. Yeah, they're quite interesting. I don't tend to use iron Gordon pigment inks that much. It's the honest truth. They don't really do. They don't have the chromatography really that I'm looking for.
Yeah. Okay. But Vinta definitely do. There's got a couple of people obviously having a little play with Vinta inks by the look of it, based on the messages that are coming through. And you're using the ink like neat, as in straight out of the bottle. There's no dilution of the ink.
Well,
just the water that's diluting that's on the page. Is that right?
It is. It's the water that's bringing out these fantastic,
And what size are your swatch cards that you're using? I think
they're tiny. They're tiny. They're about 10 centimeters by 6 centimeters. You don't need to, have a spend a, you don't. One thing about fountain pen, my art is it's not large scale. It is really designed for art journaling, I suppose, my techniques.
And we've got someone's just joined asking you about bleach. So we're not using bleach today. We're just using water. But if you do want some ideas on using bleach, Nick's got a course on his website. You can join, lots of information on there as well. So we'll share the details at the end and when we share the workshop.
Okay, so there we are. That's going to be the this is going to be the Earl Grey. That's the Parker Quink. That's the Noodlers, and that's the Tesson we did. So there we are. That just gives you some idea of what you can do with fountain ink. And a lot of people do have a lot of ink, but the neighbour don't really know what else to do with it. So hopefully that gives some idea of what you can play around with.
That's fantastic. And you talked about the small swatches. What's the biggest size piece of art you've done, or that using this technique? How big have you gone with this? Is my question.
Do you want me to get it out the cupboard and show you?
You can if you like. I'm sure everyone would love to have a look if that's feasible.
Are you sure?
Oh, is okay. Maybe.
Well,
maybe.
The biggest piece of art that I've done with this technique is probably it's 4 feet high and 10 feet wide. So it's more than 10 feet wide. It's about 20 feet wide. Yeah, 5 foot high, I would say, and about 10 foot wide. It's on. I'll show you a bit of it.
Okay, there's lots of yeses, so everyone definitely wants to have a look.
All right. Right.
Let me just move that. If I move the spotlight over, we'll flip back again in a minute and we can have a look.
So give you some idea.
Oh my goodness.
Of something that I did. This is called Catherine Wheel. It's enormous. This was done with a giant brush that I made. Does that give you some idea?
That gives, I mean, how
big.
How much?
Big, you can see.
It's huge. How much ink did you use for it, and how long did it take?
It took about an hour.
Oh my! Wow.
But it actually took about 20 minutes to do. But it just took about just to mop it off and get it to dry and stuff like that, really. How much ink did I use? I'll show you how much ink I used. About that much.
Wow. So if people have got lots of ink lying around, a giant sized piece of art is a good way to use.
Yeah. So yeah, you can do lots of lovely things.
That is amazing. I think you had some, did you have some other pictures you were going to share with us? Let me just move the spotlight around.
Okay, well, these
Yeah,
are all
go on.
drying nicely, so you can see that they're all working, and that's just using 3 inks with just chromatic qualities. And as I say, once you've sort of done what you want to do with them, they are very pretty. I'll show you what you can do with them. 2 here, which are quite fun. You there? Right, that's a framed one there. That's
Lovely.
using
That's a
using
nice
reflective
frame.
glass.
Nice frame to make the picture pop.
That's better. So that's got a lovely sheen in it. Can you see that sheen?
Yes.
That's scribble purple. Really simple. With a really lovely sheen. So, you know, you could use, as I said, fountain inks, they are just lovely. They're just lovely things. There's no, I don't think there's anything, there are no boundaries to it. And that's the wonderful thing. I think it's just full of surprises. But yeah, I have got some things if you want. Do you want to show a few things?
We do. And actually, you know, I think just based on some of the questions that come through, before we move on to some of your amazing pictures, could you just go over the inks that you've used today again? Because getting a few questions about what they were, just so people can see the different inks.
This is Noodler's Rome Burning. Very, very cruelly described as the most boring brown in the world. Terrible, isn't it? What a dreadful thing to say. And it's just so pretty, isn't it, once you deconstruct it? It
is amazing.
Yeah. So I would honestly recommend definitely getting hold of some Rome Noodler's Burning. It is just gorgeous. And I'll tell you what works really well with it. If you use that for the bottom half of your landscape, and if you use something like a Troublemaker, abalone or petrichor for the sky, oh, it's just absolutely gorgeous. Really pretty.
Fabulous. We don't currently have noodles on Cult Pens, it's probably worth saying, but it is, I know you can get it elsewhere, and we're trying to get hold of that and get that added to the site.
This is Darmine Earl Grey, but you could use Cult Pens Blue, which is lovely, which is Robert Oster, or you could use Cult Pens Matthew, which is very similar.
Yes, it is very similar.
Very similar, but it's the Cult Pens one's got a rust colour as opposed to the Earl Grey's got a pink. And the last one is my old favourite, which is yeah, it's that old Parker Quink again.
Love that.
All right, I'll show you why I really like the Quink. Is lovely. It is good. It's good fun.
Who inspires you, Nick, in terms of artwork? Do you look at other artists using fountain pen inks, or any other artists, you know, not using inks, but just giving you some inspiration for the art that you're creating? I haven't seen many people's work that I can use in my own work. That's the honest truth. I think I'll probably get more inspiration from black and white photography, to be honest with you. I'm not going to say any more about that at this stage, because I have got a whole load of stuff that I've been working on. Well, I can show you if you like. So a lot of this stuff is based, all my new stuff, which I'll be doing. If you want to follow me on Instagram, by the way, it's at Quink and Bleach, and I've been doing the Inktober challenge, one a day. And what I'm trying to do is get away from colour photography, because I'm very disappointed really with a lot of art, whether that I see, because I think a lot of it's just straightforward plagiarism or just copying.
And what I find strange is that people want to do that when they've got a really expensive smartphone. They can just take a picture and put a filter on it, and it'll be much better quality than what they're trying to do. So what I try and do is take black and white photography, and then I try and use that information together with the chromatic atmospheres, and then using the detailing of the main ink that I've chosen, or maybe 2 or 3 inks. So I'm basically using the fountain pen inks to give me what I want. And I think that the chromatography is giving me the atmospheres that I'm looking for. And I think the best thing I like is the fact that it's full of surprises, because I never really know what I'm going to end up with. And I think I need that in my life, particularly at this time of my life. I just love surprises, because, you know, most people nowadays seem to go out and get everything they want at the touch of a button, and there's no surprises anymore. So this particular process is just great if you love surprises, because you just don't know what you're going to get. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense, and I love that. I love the test it, try and break it, you can't go wrong, making something from, as you said, deconstruction at the beginning. I think that's fantastic. Just before you change that picture, sorry, switch
Which
back.
one do you want? This one here?
Was that the Robert Oster? Is that Opal Mauve?
That's Robert Oster Australian Opal Mauve.
Yes.
And it is an absolutely gorgeous ink. And it'll never let you down. It's just wonderful.
It's a great colour.
So that's all of that. It's just out of one colour and just a tiny bit of bleach. That's it.
That's fantastic. So do you tend to use one colour per picture rather than trying to do any different ink blending? Because someone was asking about dipping directly into the bottle, and then do you have any issues with contamination? But if you're using one ink per picture, I'm supposing that you don't get issues with contamination.
I'm quite careful. I'm very careful. I don't want to contaminate my inks at all. So, and also I don't necessarily just take straight from the bottle. If I'm doing art, I will mix the ink with water before I apply it. So if I'm just painting straight onto, because I mean, today we're doing chromatography. That's what this workshop's about. But I also just use fountain pen ink to paint straight onto into a sketchbook or something. In which case, if I'm not laying a background down, I will just water it down using a mixing palette, just water and ink. So I get a really nice light wash of it. And some of those super sheens, those really heavy sheening inks, they're great to paint, to illustrate with, because you can get these really, if you add lots of water, you can get a really, really light background. Let it dry, or grade it if you wish to, and then you can use the full ink, the full power of the ink for doing your line work. And of course, some of those really heavy sheens, you end up, for example, Darmin Purple Rain, which is I think that's a German exclusive. That sheen is a really heavy yellow, metal yellow. So the line work can end up with this sort of metallic yellow on top of a beautiful purple background. So you're getting some really wonderful effects, really wonderful effects.
And any other sheening inks that you would suggest? Any favourites that you have in addition to that one?
Well, I mean, I actually use Cult Pens, Darwin and Robert in most of my workshops as a standard. They're still my favourites, and if you go to my website, you'll see why. They really do blend together beautifully, and particularly for abstract calligraphy. Cult Pens, Darmin, Robert and Maureen are just incredible. Brilliant. Yeah, they're my favourites without a doubt.
Fabulous, thank you.
You've also got another range of inks that I don't think you're maybe aware of, but you've got some Cult Pens Darmin dark inks, which are also very good, and the purple that in that particular range, the deep darks, they're very good tonal ranges. So if you want to get a good tonal range, in fact, I will be using a few of those colours for the rest of my Inktober, because the purple is particularly good. And when you flick bleach on it, I think it turns a really beautiful cyan, if I remember rightly.
Wow.
But it's very, very, it's a fantastic stuff. It's good stuff.
Right. Well, we'll make sure we're sharing those on our channels once you've posted them as well, so everyone can have a look. That's fantastic.
I just wanted to show you this. This is used. I mean, there's a fantastic ink company out in Indonesia called Troublemaker, which I'm sure a lot of people have heard of. And they have got these duotone inks. There's abalone, milky sea, kelp, kelp tea, and petrichor. And this is using petrichor, and you can see it's just incredible. You get this pink with these greens and these greys, and then you can use. I just use some line work here of the heavy ink just to put I know something which is a bit more graphic in there. I just wanted to say that they are absolutely gorgeous inks to use. In fact, I'll just grab something out of here to show you how good they are. That is just using, how do I put this on? That's just a very quick watercolor over when I was on holiday last year, and that is just using the two of them together, abalone and petrichor. They're just absolutely gorgeous, and you know, that's just out of two inks. I mean, how many colors would you use if you're going to do a watercolor of that? I don't know, but you know, they are really, really lovely inks. So they're very, very sensitive. There you go. That is the petrichor. And you can see that the colour's different depending on what paper you use, because this is a Harnmule sketchbook. And although I can't really afford Harnmule, to be honest with you, but they are very good. And of course, the inks behave differently on different papers.
And is that a book of your travels? So you've got ink with you and you've used that
to... That's right. Yeah, I just take a couple of bottles of ink with me, and I just do a bit of sketching when I feel like it.
Fantastic.
And it's easy because it's fast, and you can sit down in a cafe with a coffee or something, and you can just whack these out really fast because you don't, it's a very quick medium to get your head around, I think. Did
you say Troublemakers from Indonesia?
I think I could be wrong.
Someone else said Philippines. We don't have that currently on cut. No, but they weren't sure either. So we will find out. It's on our wish list.
Yeah, I think Vinta are over there as well. I mean, their inks are great. Vinta inks are great.
Yeah, the Vintas are fantastic.
Yeah, I like them as well. I haven't got many of them, but they are lovely. They're lovely to use.
Someone's already asked about your next workshop with us on the journal, to do the art, to talk through the art journal. But I think we'll probably have to think about another one for that.
We'll have to have a chat about that then. if you want to.
That's amazing.
So yeah. I mean, basically, there's a lot of fun to be had with thousands of fountain pen inks, and they're all different, and and they've all got different characters, and there's a lot of opportunity to have a lot of fun.
I think we've had a lot of people having a lot of fun this evening, for sure, based on the messages that are coming through. So thank you everyone for all your questions. I genuinely, Nick, I think this is the most attendees we've had on a workshop, and it's certainly the most engagement we've had in terms of questions and everyone trying to work it out. So really, really amazing. Thank you so much. If we're going to wrap up now. I think we've answered most questions. If anybody has any other questions that you think about afterwards, please get in touch with us, and we will speak to Nick. I've been back and forth on various questions anyway. So please get in touch with us. You can also get in touch with Nick, so follow him on Instagram.
Claire, I was just going to say that if anyone watching just wants some more time, if they go to my YouTube channel, there are some videos on there I don't think I'm doing any sort of talking through, but from what I've said tonight, I think you can pick up the gist of it. Brilliant. And just follow. I just copy what I'm doing, because you'll know what to do now. Fantastic.
Well, we've recorded this session, so we'll share that as well. So that will be on our YouTube channel soon. So probably the next couple of days, we'll make sure we share that specifically with all of you. You can go to Nick's website, so that's nickstewart.ink, and find out more and look at all the swatches and the ink tests that Nick has done so far. And there are courses on there as well, so we can share all of that information with you. So we'll share the recording, and that you can have a try, and I'm sure we'll be asking Nick to come back again very soon, based on the engagement.
If you want to put that onto the big studio thing, now all these swatch cards are nearly dry now, so you can see all the colours are
right,
have come out. There, can you see?
There we go. Fantastic.
So there you are. That's a watercolor out of nothing, really.
That's incredible. I think for anyone that's been doing this, we would love to see your artwork. So if you would like to share that with us, please do. We've got a social media hashtag on Cult Pens, which is Cult Pens Creative. Feel free to email it. I think everyone's got probably got my email address from the webinar registration as well. So we'd love to see the artwork. We can share them if you're happy to share them on social, and Nick will share them with you as well, so we can all have a look at the creations and see which ink we like most. You tell Nick and I are going to be very enthused to have a look at that. So and if you're happy, we can share those wider. So please do share those creations. That's fantastic. So as I said, video to be shared in the next couple of days, so you can do some more practice. And we will hang on just for a minute or two, but we'll close off our cameras and sound now and say thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. And we've got more workshops to come in the next couple of months, so we'll be sharing more details on those shortly, and I'm sure Nick will be back again soon. Thank you so much, Nick. It was amazing. And
can I just say thanks to everyone for tuning in. I hope they've enjoyed it, and I know that I recognise some of the names, by the way, and it's lovely to see you all there.
I hope you're watching. You're getting lots of thank yous and lots of love coming through on the messages, Nick.
Oh, it's great. You know, I mean, there's been some fantastic support over the years, and I really do appreciate it. And you know, I hope that it's making everyone happy, because it is such a lovely, simple thing to do.
Amazing. Thank you so much, and thanks everyone for joining. See you all soon. Thanks. Take care.